Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on Midweek with Church Planners. I'm Rick Young and joined by Aaron Taylor at Living Hope Columbus. And usually Jason Williams is with us, but something happened and Aaron, it doesn't feel right without him here, but I mean,
he's still doing his hair this morning.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. But, the show must go on, but man, we are excited to be with you today. And Aaron's going to introduce our special guest that we have with us today. We're excited to be with you guys today. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, so over the last few weeks, each one of our church planters that's on this show, we have brought on a mentor from our past that kind of helped get us to where we currently are. And so we were blessed to have Pastor Travis Davenport with us a few weeks ago, Pastor Johnny Hunt a couple weeks ago. And today we get to have my pastor, Pastor Jeremy Westbrook. He serves now at Calvary Church in Clearwater, Florida, which is just an incredible church down south, one of the flagship churches in our convention. And Pastor Jeremy was my pastor for a few years here in Marysville, Ohio, just north of where we planted our church. And then about 5 years ago, he backslid and decided to leave the Ohio weather and go to the beach, live by Disney. And I'm not bitter or anything. I'm still not over it. So Pastor Jeremy, we are so glad you're here, man. Can you just catch everybody up real quick? I know some of our friends from Marysville will probably watch this as well. Where are you and what do you do now? And if you all didn't notice, he's sitting by his pool as well this morning. So this is just great.
Man, it's great to be with you. And technically, it's only been 3.5 years. And
okay.
Yeah. It may feel like 5 some days, but it's only been 3.5 years, and which is crazy. It's crazy to even think that. But yeah, I serve as senior associate pastor at Calvary Church. Calvary is a church that in 2016 turned 150 years old. A vision was born to multiply by 150 churches. That means over the course of a decade, we want to plant and revitalize 150 churches locally, nationally, and globally. So I've been doing that down here as well. And then about 1.5 years ago, I took another role. So I'm in 2 roles. I'm full-time at Calvary, but also serve as kind of the director of missions for our association down here in Clearwater. So kind of like what Rich Halcomb is there in Columbus. I'm glad I took some notes because now I'm trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing. But I'm also serving in a second role. I have about 70 churches in our association here. So I'm serving and so kind of doing 2 things at once, wearing some hats. So that's kind of what I'm doing down here in Florida. I don't just sit at the beach every day.
My goodness. Hey, I'm telling you what, though, it seems like every weekend you're posting a beach pic on Facebook. So,
well, I was
finding time.
The deadgum virus. So, but we're reopening the beaches. So if you guys want to get some vitamin D, come on down.
That's right. It's 56 and sunny here in Ohio, so we're living the dream right now.
That's right.
Well, hey, man. So typically on this show, we just interview sometimes just each other, and sometimes we bring in mentors and friends. And really, we thought it would be appropriate today, as so many churches are beginning their reentry process, reopening, rephasing, whatever you want to call it. We've noticed that there is just a stress in the air that I think you can cut with a knife. People are fearful. Some are afraid. Some are saying, hey, let's just go back in the building and make things normal again. And so there's just this spectrum of stress that's present. And so we thought it would be appropriate this week on this show to really just provide encouragement and allow people to hear stories of how Jesus is just still actively working in our nation and around the world. But what I really want us to start with today is I would love for you to share the Living Hope Marysville story again. And I know it has to be kind of abbreviated and there's so many things you could share. But every time I hear that, it's part of what drew me to come to Marysville so many years ago and to work with you for a while, is what Jesus did through that church and now what has happened since then. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to you, and then Rick and I will, if we have just clarifying questions, we'll do that, and then we'll just keep going from there, man. So
I appreciate it. One of the things that I heard when our church was about 1 year old, I went to a conference and I heard a speaker say something. As a young planter, I was probably up every night worried, are people going to come? I got to pay salaries. I got to raise money. I got to do this thing. I want to make it sustainable. Everybody was moving to Marysville to plant churches. No one was lasting more than 2 years, it seemed like. And just as a young guy in his late 20s, early 30s, I was up every night trying to figure all this out. And I heard something that just riveted my soul, that helped me. He said, he called it sleeping sovereignly. He said, I finally learned that I can go to bed at night because God's awake and in charge. And so there's no reason for us both to be up.
Wow.
And that changed my ministry.
Yeah.
That changed a lot of my identity in the Lord as a young planter who would constantly, you go to a conference and speak and everybody thinks you got it all together, but then you still got to go home and you still got to go to bed. Yeah. And your wife looks at you and says, hey, you all right? You got, it's just working through all of those things. So I would just say, leading into the story of Living Hope, as we talk about this pandemic and all the things, we'll get to all of that. But at some point, we're going to have to believe our sermons.
That's right. Wow.
At some point, we're going to have to just believe them and not just preach them and write about them and do podcasts about them. We're going to have to believe it and go to bed at night. So you know what? God, Psalm 115:3 says, our God's in the heavens and he does whatever he pleases. We got to believe that.
Yeah.
And our people got to believe it. And our people got to see us believing and leading from that truth. So just kind of lead off with that.
That's good. Yep.
So I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. Best barbecue and sweet tea that God ever made. And I'll fight everybody and argue about that. I've heard I've heard Mark Clifton and the Kansas City boys and Brad Briscoe talk about Kansas City. And then I got the Carolina boys. Florida may have great weather and great beaches. They don't have good barbecue down here. I'm just saying. But I was born and raised in Memphis and staff with a church called Kirby Woods Baptist Church. They commissioned and sent me to plant a church up in Ohio in 2008. So as the recession was hitting, we left to move. We believe God was above the recession, just like he's above the recession now.
Yep.
With about 3.5, 4 weeks to go before we had to move, we had about 7 or 8 homes around us with for sale signs, and we couldn't sell our home to save our life. And even we had a Christian realtor in our church call me and say, you know what, Jeremy, I can't sell your house. He said, God's going to have to sell your house. And I thought, boy, at first I thought, how depressing is that? The Christian realtor won't even sell our house in the church. Lord have mercy. But you know what I learned? That God is above the economy. He's the best real estate agent you'll ever have. And the news does not determine what happens in this world. And with about 3.5, 4 weeks to go, God sold our house. We had people all around us taking $10,000, $12,000 loans going in the hole to sell their house. We sold our home, made $47 on the house. I took Jennifer to Outback, and we had the best steak of our life. I got steak, we got chicken. It was the best dinner I've ever had in my life,
That's awesome.
So God, and I should have known then. I didn't. I was too stupid, but I should have known then what was coming as we moved to Ohio. And so we're out there in Marysville. Half the town works for Honda. So I prayed for Honda every day for God to bless that place. Yep. I think when it comes to leading people to Jesus or planting a church, it's not because of us. Usually it's in spite of us.
Yeah, that's good.
I did more things wrong than I got right.
Yeah.
But God's the author and finisher of our faith. And God's the author and finisher of the churches. He plants churches. Go read Revelation, right? Go read the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus plants churches.
That's right. That's good.
Not us. The biggest issue I had is identity. Mm-hmm. You don't plant anything. God plants it. You just get to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So at some point, we've got to realize that and remember that in this journey we call church planting.
Yeah. Yeah.
God planted a church in Marysville. I just got to be a part of it. And we sell our house. We put everything in a U-Haul, and we move to a land of the unknown. It's cold. It snows. Not as much sweet tea. City barbecue is good. Some Southern boys started that restaurant, but it's decent. So we go there in the midst of a recession, and we plant a church. And families from Memphis, different areas and states. We even had a family from Alaska move down to be a part of our church plant. It was just a God story. So we began meeting in Northwood Elementary, and we kept outgrowing every place that we were at. We began meeting. The first interest meetings were at a library, and then it was a YMCA we met in, and then it was a wedding event center, and then one interest meeting, I had 60 people in the parking lot The lady forgot about us, locked us out. We went across the street with 20 minutes. Our team took all of our equipment in 20 minutes, went across the street to the Hampton Inn, set up shop. I paid her $50. We had an interest meeting service. The place was packed with 70 people in a meeting room, and a family from Alabama. How they found, I couldn't get some of our staff to find out where we were. This family from Alabama heard about us through Dublin Baptist, found us at the Hampton Inn, and joined the church that night.
It's incredible.
You can't make this stuff up. Well, and then we launched with 240 people at Northwood Elementary. We outgrew that facility. We moved down the street to Creekview Intermediate there in Marysville. We outgrew that. And so everybody thinks, oh, man, I wish I had that problem. We're just outgrowing everything. Well, it sounds great until you're in it.
Yeah.
And then you show up every Sunday and half your church is like, hey, when are we going to get a place to meet and actually call home? Because that was the big question. And that's where planners really face the identity issue is, okay, you start off well and you're booming and your excitement builds, you got a good core. Then all of a sudden you start going, okay, what's the next step? Okay, I'm at A. I know I got to get to B, but that principle of path, how do we get there? How do we go from just being portable to permanent? Because everybody ties their identity of, okay, well, this is a cool gig, but are you really going to get serious one day and actually be a real church long-term here in this city?
Yeah,
and that's what everybody's asking. And that's what you and the staff, that's what your people, deep down, they're wondering, this is a cool gig, new website, new logo, a new vibe, new way of doing church. Oh, man, this is great. But at what point do we become, and this is what everybody said, when do you become real?
Yeah.
And that was what I was wrestling with. Got a couple hundred.
Did you find too, I think Rick and I have dealt with this, that the city was asking that question about you as well?
Oh, we had visitors every week checking us out because they'd heard about us. We were one of 4 new churches one of the new kids on the block in the city, and they were just seeing which one was going to last.
That's right. Yeah.
Because leading up to that, Marysville, before the recession hit in 2008, Marysville was just exploding with growth. And everybody was leaving, Columbus, Dublin, even Lewis Center, Powell. People were pushing into that corridor, so it was just experiencing growth. But then the recession hit, and then boom, it just stopped. And then, but still, people were still coming. So, yeah, we had lots of visitors, and a lot of people were just checking us out as the new kids on the block.
Right.
And we were getting that every single week. I knew I had my 100 people who were going to be there no matter what, but I had 20 or 30 a week checking us out, saying, okay, we'll see you in 4 weeks. We got 3 more to go visit.
Right.
That was all going on as well.
Yeah.
So you had that happening. So we were growing and expanding, but then we were out of room. And then it was like, okay, what do we do? And I just want to accelerate the story a little bit. I'm skipping so much.
Sure.
Maybe one day we'll do a Memphis to Marysville thing. I don't know.
There you go. You still need to write that book.
Maybe we'll write that one day.
Yeah.
Pandemic continues on. I'll have more time by the pool. I'll write it.
That's right.
So we had gone to 3 different locations in Marysville. There was in downtown Marysville, there was a big building, and we were actually going to get that given to us. But we found out that really had a lot of asbestos in it. That really wasn't good for church growth. So we didn't really want to do that. So when somebody gives you a key and it's free, just do a little investigation, count the cost, check for asbestos. Okay. They meant well, but parking was limited, too much upkeep, had to re-gut everything. It wasn't worth it.
Sure.
Then there was an 84 Lumber there in the heart of Marysville, Christian family. We were looking at that, but then the family's like, no, we want to keep it in the family. That didn't work out. Then there was the third thing, strike, was, hey, there was a subdivision in Marysville, Christian name subdivision, and had a 5-acre lot at the corner, I kid you not, at the corner of Emmaus and Damascus Road. You can't make this stuff up. And the guy who owned this subdivision had been praying for a church to be planted there for over 10 years and kept out that 5-acre plot for a church. I mean, he took me to a free Chinese buffet. I called our church to a prayer and fasting, 40 days of prayer and fasting over the holidays. I mean, when you do prayer and fasting over the holidays, you mean business.
That's right, man.
we just believed. I mean, I had the book written from Memphis to Marysville. Church goes in a 5-acre plot of ground at the corner of Emmaus and Damascus Road. Boom, end of story.
Yep.
Well, New Year's comes, we meet for lunch again, and I was thinking, hey, he's going to tell us we're just going to give it to you. Well, he didn't say that. He had a nice price tag, and I was just deflated. And I had to go back to our church. I mean, it was the most dreaded Sunday of my ministry, is to have to go to my church on that Sunday morning there in the school and say, we're not going to get to do this. Because I had a conviction to not lead our church into debt.
Yeah.
Jesus said, before you do something, count the cost. Make sure you can finish it. I just had a conviction. Pastor Johnny, who you just had on, he said, one time I heard him say this. He said, where the best fruit hangs on the tree? It's out there all the way on the limb. We like to clutch by the root, by the trunk of the tree where it's safe.
Yeah.
And he said the best fruit hangs all the way out there on the limb. Well, I was leading our young church to go out there and get the fruit all the way out there on the limb. Because listen, when I was in that U-Haul that day, leaving Memphis, moving to Marysville, I prayed a prayer. Be careful what you pray for. You just might get it.
That's right.
I had no idea what I was praying. But I said, God, keep us desperate. Keep our young church in a position where only you can move and only you can get the credit.
That's good.
Well, I thought I knew I was praying, but God definitely knew, and he kept us in that position. And I was discouraged. I was depressed. 3 strikes, we were out. Our church was looking at me like, Westbrook, what the heck are you doing to us? We're outgrowing everything. We have nowhere to go. Marysville wasn't, a rustling Columbus, you know what I mean, with storefronts everywhere.
Right.
There wasn't many places to go. You're a town of 25,000 people with 3 exits. Wasn't many options, bro.
Right.
How many more strikes you got?
Yeah.
I was discouraged. I was depressed. Our church was growing. Everybody was excited. I was getting all these invitations to come speak, but our people were discouraged. And I was battling discouragement. I was standing in line at the Apple store at the Polaris Mall getting the new iPad, right? I had nothing else to do. I was just deflated. So might as well get a new iPad. So I'm there in Polaris Mall getting the new iPad. This is 2010. This is back when the iPad was bigger than our head. And I was getting that one, and my phone rang standing outside the Apple store, and there was a realtor that said, hey, there's a property in your city that just got shut down. It was the Wedding Event Center that we met in a couple of years ago as we were launching our church. They came in right after a wedding. They weren't paying their bills. I don't know all the story. I don't really care. They shut down the facility the moment after a wedding. So 6 months had passed by, and all the stuff, including the food, was still in there.
Wow.
So $400,000 was the asking price. I had a conviction. Our leaders had a conviction, Living Hope. Let's be debt-free. Let's see God do this. Start making calls all around the country to our partner churches. Call our people. We have a members meeting at the YMCA there in Marysville. I buy a case of The Treasure Principle by Randy Alcorn. I tell every member, go home, and my team was like, what the heck are you asking them to do? It was just amazing. And so I knew we had a few weeks. I told our church, this is it. This is the window that if God can do this. So a few weeks passed by. We raised $305,000 cash to win this property.
Wow.
We were going against other churches, other businesses. They're in Marysville. They're in Dublin wanting this facility. I knew we had to do it. I knew we had to get this, or we had nowhere else to go. So $305,000 cash. I thought we had it in the bag. The receivership property appraisal guy in Dublin calls us and says, hey, someone just put a bid of 380.
Oh.
You got 305. You got 24 hours to raise $76,000 or you lose.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, I believe God can do it. These were his words. He said, we'll see what your God can do. I was like, it's on, Jack. And so I immediately go home. I call some partner churches. Well, a main one in Memphis for me at Kirby Woods. Talk to our leaders. You talk about a move of God. The finance committee had a meeting that night at the altar. At the altar. I got a call. It's hard to talk about. Less than 12 hours, I got a call from a leader at that church. And they said, hey, Jeremy, the money's on the way. Go to bed tonight. God has this.
Wow.
Woke up the next morning, called that realtor. I said, hey, bro, we don't have 380. We got 381 cash. I was happy. I called my staff team together. I said, we're going to Der Dutchman in Plain City. I don't know if I said that. Everybody says it was Der Dutchman. I don't know, whatever the heck you want to say it is.
Yep.
So we went to staff lunch at Der Dutchman. I bought everybody. I said, we're going to the bakery. Everybody gets a donut. You know what I mean? Like we were just excited. Got a call at Der Dutchman from the realtor. Hey, somebody just put an offer of $385.
Oh my gosh.
Like, are you kidding? I said, what's it going to take for me to close this deal today? He said, if you can tell me $400,000 cash, it's yours. 19 grand I had to find. So we made a decision to say, you know what? All right, $400,000. But then I got to find $19,000. When you're a church planner, you're trying to find 1,000.
That's right.
So that's 19,000. That afternoon, it was a Wednesday, 5:00. Aaron knows my house. I pulled up in my driveway. I go to get the mailbox, get the mail in the mailbox. I got a phone call from a member of our church who had just gotten right with the Lord, prominent member, great faithful giver. He said, Jeremy, that meeting we had this past Sunday night at the YMCA, my wife and I were talking about it. We don't really need to build our retirement home just yet. There's a check in the mail for 10 grand.
Wow.
An hour and a half had passed by since that phone call that he called me. He had no idea. Listen, at some point, we got to remember there's scenes in heaven going on that we're not aware of.
That's right.
Remember Job? I'm preaching through Joseph on Wednesday nights here at Calvary. There's scenes happening. God's working in our waiting.
Yeah.
You got to believe that.
That's good.
He called and said, there's $10,000 in the mail. I said, you don't know what just happened an hour and a half ago. We put a $19,000 faith offering to get this property. And here you are calling me, telling me $10,000. He called back 20 minutes later. I had gone in, seen Caden. Caden was probably, how old was Caden? 05. He was probably 5. Abby was 1. I'm just down there on the floor wrestling with them, trying to get normal again. It's one of the best things you can do, by the way, as a planner. When you get home, get on the floor and wrestle.
Yeah.
Get normal.
Yeah.
You wrestle all day long. Go and wrestle with the kids.
It's good.
He called me back. He said the other 9,000 is on the way. He got the whole 19,000.
Wow.
God did it. Through people, through partner churches, God raised $400,000. I don't remember all of the timeline now. It fails me, but maybe in 4 weeks, maybe.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I was doing a program. First, I was Woodstock, one of my partner churches, and a church playing school. And I told Dr. Agee, hey, I'm gonna steal this. I'm gonna call it the Count the Cost. So I still have somewhere the card. We did a capital campaign, our first ever at Living Hope, called Count the Cost. I think we raised another $500,000 between churches and our people at our young church. By the way, people have more than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Challenge them. You know, most people, it's not a money issue, it's a vision issue.
Yeah.
They need a vision to give to. Listen, our people want to give, but you got to give them something to give to.
Yeah.
Our people gave.
That's great.
And we raised another almost $500,000. So we moved in June 2011, I think, 2012. And I forget, it gets a little fuzzy. We moved in 08, launched in 09. I think June of 11, June of 12, we moved in. And we stood that first Sunday, and God raised almost $1 million. We purchased and renovated the entire facility, and we moved in, and God paid for it all. And it was just phenomenal what God did. And that's part of our journey.
Yeah.
So even Big Jack Helton called me yesterday and from Ohio. We were talking about the miracle story of he was driving up 33 and thinking about Marysville. And Every time you see that building, it's just a testimony to God's favor and grace and what God can do, not because of us, but in spite of us. So that's just a quick snippet in just a few short years, how the Lord birthed the church in Marysville. And we probably had close to 300 people coming within our first 3 years, moved into a facility, and God did all of it.
Yeah.
And so that's just a quick snippet of what the Lord did.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think, Rick and I, one thing that we want to know is we need the names and numbers of all of those people so we can, just to make sure they're doing okay. That's all we'll do.
I understand.
Anything like that.
Hey,
But,
Pastor Jeremy, first of all, I've heard that story before. It never gets old. Okay. And so I mean, it just hearing you talk, it brings tears to my eyes of just seeing God's faithfulness. Okay. And so, but I wanted to ask you, and first of all, I know living in Florida, because I lived in Florida for a while. It seems like everybody in Ohio just thinks that all we do is go to the beach. And so, and also, you know, there's some, I don't know if you like Sonny's barbecue in Florida. I don't know if you even consider that barbecue, but. So,
Okay.
Hey, my question to you would be is, okay, during this time, because man, you hear that story and gosh, it makes me want to get off the computer and, you know, just go challenge our people and stuff like that. How would you challenge and encourage church planters during this time with COVID-19? Because obviously we just started January 12th, okay? Met for 7 weeks and then had to shut down because, or, you know, do everything online because we couldn't meet. What would you tell I'd say a young church planter, but I'm an old church planter, okay?
Yeah.
But what would you say to church planters right now that maybe started and they're like, oh my gosh, man, I'm in this pandemic and I'm not sure what to do. How would you encourage them? What would maybe be like maybe the top thing or the top two things you say, man, make sure you're doing this during this time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Charles Spurgeon, who battled discouragement and depression, said he learned to take the word disappointment and take the D off and put an H, and they become his appointments. And I think as planters, we have got to stop seeing this as an obstacle, but an opportunity. We just had a church launch here in the Florida Baptist Convention. They launched during COVID-19. And as a director of missions, I'm seeing pastors who are having massive increase in attendance and an increase in giving. I tell some of my pastors, you may never want to ever go back to meeting. You know what I mean? Your giving and attendance is through the roof right now. You may want to never go back. And I'm just joking mostly, but I'm just, you know, I think as planters, I know it's frustrating, but I would say, man, learn to see this as a major platform. Listen, I have met more neighbors in the past 6 weeks than I have my first 3 years on the street that I live in.
Yeah, it's good.
We just rolled out a making disciples tool at Calvary. We accelerated it by almost a year because our people have an opportunity to be on mission and they're more open than they ever have been. I think there's conversations happening in the Western United States church that we would have never had without this pandemic. Yeah. I'm not saying we should rejoice in it. I'm just telling you, we have got to, at some point, see this as an opportunity and not an obstacle and leverage being missional in our neighborhoods. I say, take the core you've got of 100 people, man, mobilize your core right now. Give them the tools to train them to be the church right now.
Yeah, that's good.
I say you have a great opportunity to mobilize your core like you've never had. Rather than just saying, hey, it's more than just gathering on Sundays and doing some cool events, you know, throughout the city. I say, see your neighborhood as a missional network opportunity to we rolled out the oikos method at Calvary. Listen, you got spheres of influence in your oikos, in your immediate circles. Start praying for them. Start making disciples in those networks to where you really get to be the church. So I would just tell planters, if you would just focus on mobilizing and making disciples of the core right now, you are light years ahead of where you would be in a normal routine of just trying to launch the church.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's totally. I mean, I think that's a good word for not only for church planners. I think it's a good word for churches in general.
Yes.
I mean, if you don't mind, I'm going to steal that quote from before, his appointments, because I think we need as Christians, we need to think that way.
Yeah.
And so it totally makes sense, which is a word. And that's what I'm saying. It's not just for church planners. I think whoever is watching this, whether they're a church planner on church staff or just a lay person or leader in church, it's a good word for all of us. So
for so long, we have kind of bifurcated making disciples and multiplication. But dadgummit, they go together scripturally.
Yep.
If you're truly making disciples, the multiplication flywheel happens, right? And so we're trying to flip the script on a 154-year-old church down here, a church of 4,000 people, 3 campuses, an incredible church with a heart for multiplication globally like I've never seen. And we have a church saying, hey, let's redefine winning. And let's actually focus on, okay, we got groups and we got Sunday school, but we're trying to maximize this moment for multiplication through seeing our neighborhood networks as making disciples and multiplying and mobilizing our people, saying, hey, you're not just members of this church, you're missionaries out of this church. And we're going to equip you and give you the tools to make disciples and to be the church on your street. And in your spheres of influence and your neighborhoods and your networks. So I would just say, man, as hard as this is, and we all want to get back together, that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, let's maximize and let's see this as an opportunity, not an obstacle. And I think if we do, as planters, young and a little older, wouldn't call you old, Rick, little older, maybe more wise and seasoned, I think it could actually accelerate multiplication by light years if we do this the right way.
Yeah,
that's good.
Great. Well, Jeremy, as we close, man, we want to honor your time today. Can you give us just one story? So as part of X150 and your guys' multiplication movement there at Calvary, I feel like you've kind of assembled maybe the Justice League of church planters around the nation. Like I'm Aquaman, and then you got a bunch of these just amazing guys. Just share, and maybe one story. You got Rob over in Pennsylvania. You got Daniel out in California. And you got guys all over the place. Corbin out in Colorado. Man, maybe one story about how God's using one of those guys this season in just a amazing way. I would love to hear that.
Yeah, I've got tons of stories nationally. I've got, I would just say I'm gonna pivot and go international on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in South Asia, where we're planting churches, the acceleration rate through this crisis, everybody is shut down. I'll tell you one God story that we have church planters in a region in a country. I can't go into details of where they are. Just the fact that God is moving. He actually was scheduled to leave town with his wife and children to go get his paperwork renewed in that country, his visas renewed. And the Lord impressed upon him to go. And then they left the night before because the gospel is accelerating so fast in his town. They became a target of ISIS.
Wow.
And ISIS descended upon that town and village. He left with his wife and children the night before, and in the middle of the night, as him and his wife and family were exiting the village, ISIS was coming into the village, and they separated by 7 hours.
Wow.
They came in, and you know what they did to the town. They pulled people out into the streets, in the middle of the street, and executed them.
Wow.
Our church planter and his family escaped by 7 hours.
Wow.
The gospel is going forth and accelerating.
Amen.
Daniel out in San Jose is now seeing the vice principal and the principal of the school where they're meeting come to faith in Jesus.
Amen.
They were coming just to check it out, and they met Jesus, had an encounter, and their life is forever changed.
Amen.
Rob in Pittsburgh is seeing the gospel accelerate through sin relief centers in downtown Pittsburgh through this crisis.
Amen.
Find Christ in the crisis.
That's right.
Be the hands and the feet of Jesus right there in Columbus with what y'all are seeing. I mean, I could be here for 2 hours telling you these stories of what's happening right here in our own backyard in Orlando and in Tampa. Right here in Clearwater. We had no idea. We had no plans for planting a church right here in our own backyard of Clearwater, but we're planting a church. because now we're feeding the least, the last, and the lost, as Rich Halcomb likes to say.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, we had no plans to plant a church here in those people, but we're planting a church right now. Looks like there's a Bible study that's formed. There's actually just people coming to faith and being baptized and disciples being made right here in our own backyard.
Yeah.
That's happening incarnationally through feeding the least, last, and the lost and giving them the gospel.
It's good.
Aaron, it's so hard to give you one story, bro. It's
Man.
every day in my inbox, I sit overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Going, man, God, you're above this pandemic. Your gospel transcends pandemics. Your gospel transcends economic issues, generations. It goes forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, the day is going to come when we're going to stand before the Lord. Jesus is still on his throne.
Mm-hmm.
David served his generation well and then fell asleep.
Yeah.
Let's serve our generation well.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's live each day. The Apostle Paul, and I'll close with this.
Yeah.
The Apostle Paul had 2 days on his heart and mind.
Mm.
He lived each day in light of that day when he would stand before the Lord.
Mm.
And that's how we should live our ministries.
Yeah.
To live each day in light of that day
when
we'll stand before the Lord. He's on his throne. He's in charge. He's awake. So go to bed tonight. Sleep well. Sleep sovereignly, realizing that God's on his throne. He's in charge. And his gospel is truly above all. And that has to resonate deep in our soul. And that'll change our ministries if we'll make sure our identity's in Christ and not our church plants. It's a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jeremy, we fully acknowledge that the church planting movement that I think we're seeing here in Columbus, and as God is multiplying churches around here, we acknowledge and honor you, man, because as the old phrase goes, standing on the shoulders of giants. I was thinking this morning back to you and Dean Fawkes, Nick Nye, Travis Davenport, many of you guys that cleared the path for all of us that are planting churches now. And so we just honor you for that. We're thankful for you. I thank you for your obedience and for creating a platform that now so many church planters are standing on to take the gospel here to Columbus. So,
well, you're very kind. You're very, very kind, and we love y'all in Columbus. Two of my 3 kids were born there, and I still fly the flag, the scarlet and gray, down here in Florida.
Right, man.
Okay? So love you guys.
Right. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Midweek with Church Planters. We hope this was helpful and encouraging to you, and we will see you next Wednesday. Hope you have a great rest of your week.